Welcome to Everything Under the Moon.
With Mel and Stell. And this week, we're going to discuss the book Cults in America, Programmed for Paradise by Willa Appel. And this is the second installment of the Conspiracy Shelf. Cults in America, Programmed for Paradise by Willa Appel. This book I also picked up at Half Price Books. And I found the original receipt, actually, while I was reading it. And I know that since everybody really, really cares about this, I purchased the book on July 3rd, 2014 at 5:16 p.m. for the price of $4.98.
I think we talked about this the last time we did this, but I know exactly what I was doing on that day.
What were you doing?
I think I had taken my second round of SATs. And I drove to my grandmother's house for her 4th of July barbecue.
That's amazing.
Because that was my senior year, so I remember that summer pretty well.
That makes sense. Like, I was, thinking, how in the world do you remember that? But then when you said it's senior year, I'm like, oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah, right.
So I do want to make a statement just so that it is out there and it is known that my series is called The Conspiracy Shelf. But that doesn't mean that all the books that I read are like crazy conspiracy theories. And I say that because Willa Appel is a collegiate level researcher and a proper academic. And this book that she presents is actually like a step-by-step guide of how cults are formed, what things they have in common, and how brainwashing actually works on the brain as a matter of changing it physically and how it functions.
Was this a part of, her larger research, do you know? I'm wondering what she did, in academia.
I know that I made a note of what she does, but I'll be honest, it sounded like it was way above my head. So I know that she's still involved in research, and I think that she's actually, the head of a research company, of a research and development company, if I'm not mistaken.
No shame, because most PhD stuff goes right over my head. I'm like, I understand the field you're in, and that's about it. So.
Exactly. So she's doing stuff like that.
Okay.
And the back of the book says, what attracts people to cults? What needs do cults satisfy that institutions neglect? What goes on inside cults, inside the brains and psyches of people who join? What danger, if any, do cults represent to the fabric of society? And I think that this is really, really a timely issue for us to sit and talk about today because of the intense political divisions and some of the cult-like conspiracy thinking that is surrounded around QAnon and vaccines and 5G and these things are...
I totally forgot about 5G.
Yeah.
Until you said that.
Yeah, and I know, right?
Yeah.
And but the thing is, and the main thing that I took away from this book, so if you take away nothing else, take away this. Cult-like thinking can happen to anyone, and we are all susceptible to it. And Dr. Appel spends an entire chapter of actually breaking down the mechanisms by which brainwashing actually changes the way the brain works. So this is something that every single person has a risk of falling into. And if you think that you don't, then that's a problem. It's the same kind of thing that people say, advertising doesn't work on me. Yet it works. That's why companies do it. And they do it because it works on the largest majority of people.
Because it's human nature.
Exactly. So, that was the thing that I really came away with. And I think that at the time, this book was written in the early 80s. And that was just right after the Jonestown Massacre, which... that's a whole thing. I feel like I should give a quick, soundbite for them. So, Jim Jones, the gregarious cult leader.
He was a pastor to begin with, right?
Exactly. He was just a regular pastor And he slowly, over time, like he started out with a very, very general message that everyone essentially could agree with, especially with the hippie movement of the 70s. And like he really went along with that too. Like a lot of hippie, free love. Like,
yeah, I remember.
You know, everyone's the same, everyone's equal.
Yeah, I remember. I forget what documentary I watched about him, but I remember that his church was one of the first to desegregate, and he was one of the first people to have like women and people of color in like leadership positions in his churches in the 70s. Exactly. And that was huge, and that's why people loved him at first.
Exactly. And there was such a mass appeal. And over time, he took all of those regular, normal people and turned them into cult members by becoming slowly more and more radical and introducing the fear that the government was against what they were doing and was trying to shut them down and trying to take their liberty. So he convinced a group of over 900 of them to move to Guyana. And I know everybody basically that, you know, is in the older generations, Guyana.
Oh, okay. I've never actually heard the name of the place before.
Yeah, it's Jonestown in Guyana. I know that a lot of people like know that this fact, they know that this happened, but I mean, just take a moment to think that one man convinced over 900 people to move out of the country because he convinced them so thoroughly that their way of life was under threat, that they were under an existential threat. And the only way that they would be able to escape and live a life of like, have a happy, loving society that is inclusive and doesn't want to segregate, that, you know, the only way they can do that is if they leave.
And not only did they just move to another country, they moved to a place with no running water, no amenities, you know, like no grocery stores, nothing like that. They brought their children.
Yeah.
Like people brought their tiny. If you told me that you wanted me to take my kids to a place without running water permanently, I'd laugh in your face.
Yeah, no kidding.
He also was like a sex maniac, right? Like
Exactly.
He abused a lot of women in his church because he told them that God told him that they needed to be available to him, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, what's even crazier, and I'll, like, get into that topic, like, in depth a little bit more later on, but even men got into the spirit of it and would pretend to be sexually attracted to Jim Jones as a way to show that their devotion.
Yes. Okay, that's what I was getting at. It's not necessarily that he was, like, a prophet, but he very much, like, it was very much the culture of their church that you showed your appreciation for him in a sexual way.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, many know how that happened, like how it ended up at Jonestown. And I will say that if this is the first time that you're hearing about this, you know, you're one of the lucky 10,000 today that's never heard of that, then there are a lot of other sources out there that cover it more and better than I would be able to. So I would just recommend seeking that out. But the way that it ended essentially was that Jim Jones convinced / forced those 900 some people to drink cyanide-laced Flavor Aid and commit a mass suicide. I don't like calling it a mass suicide. I think it's a mass murder.
Yeah. And I think that's how the federal investigation classified it as well.
And that's great because I don't think in my life I've ever heard it called a mass murder except for in the documentary of the, like, 4 survivors.
Yeah. I'm just going to ask you a question. I don't know if you know or not, but didn't they inject people who didn't want to drink it?
Yes, and there were, like, small children and people that were fighting it. And, you know, they were injecting small children. They were injecting people, like, behind their back. So they couldn't even see, like, they didn't even know what was coming until they were already stuck, you know. And
yeah, there's no way you can call that a suicide when children are like, no, I don't want the Kool-Aid.
And let's say that this was all completely 100% everybody drank it of their own volition. Still a murder because he had completely warped their minds. Like, he actually, you know, and he's responsible for that. He is essentially, like, if it weren't for Jim Jones, they would be alive.
Yeah.
So that makes it murder to me.
Agreed.
Yeah, I mean, right? So, like, and this cult is one that is mentioned specifically by Dr. Appel as an example of many of the cults that we see today, or like as of the 80s, many of the cults we see today is what she's saying. It is a direct result of the counterculture movement of the 1960s. So this was a sort of mass rejection of society, like with the Vietnam War going on, a disillusioned American public, people trying to seek like a new and better way, much like the people, Jim Jones's group.
And I can see that a little bit today in our culture. So lately I fell down an Instagram rabbit hole. Ooh. Like, once you Google babies once, Instagram latches onto it and shows you like everything. And I started getting, I'm kind of a crunchy hippie, but I'm not like an anti-vaxxer, and I'm not, anti-science. But it just started like casually popping up in my feed. And I started, taking in this media, and like for a split second, I thought it was totally okay. Like, the way it's presented to you, you think like, oh yeah, I shouldn't give my kid unnatural stuff. Just because some Instagram mom, QAnon lady is like, it's bad for you. But it's so prevalent, and there's this attitude that this is like the new enlightened way to live your life, like without chemicals or like unnatural stuff, which like, for the record, chemicals are natural.
Exactly.
Where do you think scientists got the stuff to make the things they make in the lab?
Exactly.
Like, it all came from Earth in the first place. Like GMOs. Like, and it all came from the Earth anyway. Like,
yeah, and I mean, at the same time, just because it's natural doesn't mean that it's good.
You know what else is natural?
Bears. Bears.
So yeah, that's just my little. It's so easy to get sucked into this mindset.
And that's a really good point, and that's exactly what she gets at throughout this entire book, by explaining that it really can happen to anybody. And Instagram, I think are they owned by Facebook?
Yeah.
Okay, so Facebook, we know, has conducted mass experiments on manipulating emotions through the way that they present the data. And clearly, I would say there's other things at work too. Like, your phone knows about you. Your phone knows that you're crunchy, and it's giving you stuff that's going to appeal to your sensibilities, and maybe even cause you to change your mind on things that you stand really strong on. And that is exactly like what happens. And we just need to be aware of it. Like, that's the main thing. Like, you just got to stay aware and woke in a totally different way.
Yeah.
And I mean, literally, like, open your eyes.
Yeah. And take a second to analyze, why you're getting the content that you're getting on social media.
Those cults that came up out of the counterculture movement of the 1960s, like, those are the ones that we end up hearing about, reading about, and that's where like Heaven's Gate sprang from, for example. And I know we're going to talk about Heaven's Gate in a little bit too, just because they're so interesting. And we were both talking about how it almost seems like a happy ending for them.
Yeah, I'm not against it.
Yeah, I'm going to have you defend that stance later, and I'm really looking forward to it. And I agree with you. I just want you to defend it for us.
Love it.
So, like, it was the People's Temple and Jim Jones that like brought like the whole phenomenon of cults into like the mainstream and made it something to be concerned about. And so these cults have existed since the beginning of time, and they've always existed. And generally, before we would never hear much about them because they're so very insular, and they're not necessarily interested in like participating in the mainstream. Yeah. But things have changed now. I think these days, while we still have a lot of those same cults in the same way, I think that there is this really scary convergence of politics and religion that is fueling some of these crazy conspiracy theories. And I just wanted to ask you, because I heard some data on it, and I can't like swear that this is true, but according to my source, I found something out. And I want to ask you, how many people do you think follow QAnon? Like, just throw out a number.
2 million.
It's more like 18 million people.
Holy shit.
Just think about that.
Yeah,
I mean, if that is true, if that source is true.
And if there are like about, say, 350 million people in America.
exactly.
God, that's fucking insane. I'm dyslexic, so I'm not going to do that math, but damn.
Yeah, right? Like, it's just, yeah. And I heard that the other day, and I almost shit my pants. Like, I kid you not. I couldn't believe there were that many. But also, I'm trying to remember, and I think one thing that is keeping us all so divided as a nation is that we are not being understanding in a way. And I don't mean to be tolerant of people's intolerable views, but to at least understand that this could have happened to you.
Yeah, and that those people who are QAnon believers now, I mean, I think 10 years ago they would have been just normal Bush supporters.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
But they would have been, or maybe
has
Mitt
made
Romney.
them desperate.
Maybe I'm going too far back, but exactly, it's made them desperate, and it's further radicalized them. Like, as I have become radicalized by, like, Bernie's first campaign radicalized me politically, as I have become radicalized, am I saying that right? Whatever.
Yeah.
To the left, they have gone the other way.
Yeah, and we just have to remember that behind these beliefs are real fears and insecurities.
Mm-hmm. And real people.
Yeah.
Who are, like, educated and somewhat normal.
Yeah, they are definitely, I would not assume, although maybe there are some statistics on, like, the average IQ of a QAnon believer versus not, like, I would not assume that any individual is more or less intelligent.
I'm just imagining you going to a QAnon person and being like, will you take this IQ test for the government? And they're like, no! Like, we never get that data.
Like, oh, I'm going to have to mark it as a 0.
Exactly.
Because you wouldn't participate.
Bringing the average down. I wanted to mention, I just remembered Fundy Fridays on YouTube. She's great. She did a video on Love Has Won recently, which is a cult that just happened, I think, in the last, like, 10 years. Basically, this woman started this, like, new age type cult where you had to, typical cult stuff, and I don't mean to steal your thunder because you'll probably go over this, but, give away all of your earthly possessions, give me your social security card and your license so you can't leave, that kind of thing. And essentially, the woman who led the cult told everyone that, like, she was Mother God. She was, like, the Mother Earth goddess. But she got cancer and passed away. And they found her body essentially, like, half mummified and decorated with flowers, and, like, her eyeballs were cut out. Like, after she died, the cult, like, made a shrine out of her dead body. And it's just super gruesome, but she was crazy. I mean, if you watch...
so fascinating, though.
Yeah, if you watch
like,
this
just
YouTube
imagining
video...
that conversation, like, okay, so we imagine that she's just passed away. All the cult members are standing around, and, like, how, like, if... Oh, just to be a fly on the wall for that conversation.
Did she want that done? Or did they determine after she died to do it?
There was someone like, we could cut out her eyes.
Exactly. What did they do with the eyeballs? Where are they?
Where are the eyeballs?
Where are the eyeballs? But, like, in the video, you really should go watch it. It's crazy because this woman is not nice. Like, I remember in one of the clips, she's literally like, you don't think I fucking know the suffering of mankind? I'm everything. I'm everyone's pain. Like, she's literally going off. And, like, if my cult leader was, like, that violent, I'd be like,
Which begs the question. No, that's not the right. People say begs the question, and they use it in the wrong context so much that I'm starting to do it.
Love it.
And for proper context, just Google it. Because, it's a thing. But that brings up the question, what would your ideal cult leader be like, Mel?
Yes. Okay, hold on. I gotta choose
Once you're done with your strawberry.
Sorry. I thought I could eat quietly, but I can't. It's the gummy worms all over again. Low-key, I'm obsessed with Midsummer.
Oh,
and
true.
I think that my cult would be Midsummer. I think that if a cute man...
The Horga people?
Yeah, I think if someone invited me to Sweden and gave me handmade old-fashioned clothes, and we lived together in, like, this, communal, raise-our-own-food type of way, but there was also, like, sacrifices,
nice.
Pagan gods and stuff. Like, the dark side, I think, would appeal to me for sure. And, yeah, so I think that's it. I think any type of cult where they're like, we're going to go live naturally and all together, I would fall for, because I'm totally that crunchy stereotype.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Like,
how about you? What cult will you fall for?
My ideal cult would probably be like one that believes that we derive our power from the ocean. And therefore we can never be more than so far away from the beach at any time because it's the source of our lifeblood. And we also surf, and we also do like really complicated ceremonies out in the waves.
And you meet mermaids?
Oh, absolutely. But we also believe that we're going to return to our natural mermaid state.
Oh, I could see that before you even started talking.
For sure.
For sure.
So that would be
I join your mermaid cult for sure.
Well, I do. Your cult sounds like a lot of fun to go visit and have dinner.
Yeah, right? Come for the midnight sun,
the food
maybe.
Is bomb, like...
Oh, I just gotta say, every time I watch Midsummer, I look forward to the Etestupa, I think is how you say it, scene where those old people jump off a cliff.
Yeah.
And I just have to rant and rave about this movie because it's so good. And that scene, I mean, the director made that scene, he intended for me to feel this way, right? Like, they intend for you to see the gory violence of it, but also you want more.
That's the horror, I think, is like the whole point of the horror of Midsummer, because it's considered a horror movie. Mm-hmm. And the horror is how much you're ready to go along with it.
Yeah. And by the end, you're on her side.
It. Yeah, exactly. And like you have just excused everything. I mean, even the guy, not to mention the guy laying with his back flayed open and his lungs hanging out of his body.
I'm pretty sure that's a blood eagle.
Blood eagle. There you go. Mm-hmm. I knew there was a phrase for it, but
I don't know if they were actually trying to make it a blood eagle, but it looks like one I've seen on like every other.
I swear to you, the first time I heard about blood eagle, I thought it was made up.
Really?
It is made up in the way that everything's made up. But
yeah, and
I really felt like the person was just trying to be edgy.
Yes.
I was like, that's not a thing. And then you said blood eagle, and I'm like, okay. All right.
All thanks.
They don't know each other, so it must be real.
Well, I read an article the other day. This is a little side tangent. Because I'm into Viking culture in like a historical way. Like I'm really into figuring out what's real and what's TV. And I read an article that like blood eagling, okay, so I'll explain because people probably might not know what we're talking about.
Sure.
Blood eagling is supposedly a Scandinavian ancient tradition that maybe the Vikings or Viking era people or previous would have participated in. And it's basically a very, very gruesome death. But if you die honorably that way, you still get to go to your heaven, Valhalla, nice. But that's kind of not where all the Vikings wanted to go.
It's like a way to die in battle without dying in battle?
No, it's a way to kill your enemies, but still offer them an honorable death. So a king might blood eagle someone who had tried to like take over his throne, right, in front of everyone. So
it's like saying like, no shade, I don't blame you, but you gotta die.
Yeah, it's a respectful way to die and a way to show your power. I mean, if you think about it in terms of like why this phenomenon might have come to exist, it's definitely a way for these chieftains to show their power and their violence, which was revered in like Norse pagan cultures. Like Odin was the god of rage, and that was like a thing. So blood eagling, they basically cut open your back, flay your back skin so it hangs over the sides, and then they rip out your lungs from the backside of your like chest cavity.
Yeah.
And then they pull them up around your shoulders so it resembles wings. And that's why it's called the blood eagle. And like they might have even like put salt in your wounds while they were doing it. So it's a horrible, gruesome like
I am fascinated.
Death. Yeah, right.
I am disgusted.
Yes.
And ultimately, I'm glad I asked.
Good. So yeah, there's back what I was talking about 4 tangents later. There is some evidence to believe that this might just be a gruesome story told by people who remembered the violence of Viking era people, and they are basically creating an allegory to represent that. Kind of like how Drawn and Quartered, have you read that? That Drawn and Quartered might not have really happened all the time. It just kind of was like a gruesome thing to remember people as. Like Like, they might have only drawn and quartered one or two people, but in the history books, it's like every enemy was drawn and quartered, you know?
I get it. I keep forgetting that, like, history is, and continues to be told by old men. And, you know,
and
that
people who had a
take
vision.
with a grain of salt.
You know, I don't write things down because, I mean, there are things I write down that I want people to read later in my life, or, you know, that I'm like keeping for future generations. And I, of course, edit that, right? Like, we edit it for our own vision and story. And
that's the whole benefit of telling it yourself, right? Is like that you get to say whatever you want.
And so I can totally see how, like, maybe a lesser king would have looked back a couple generations and went, oh, my grandfather, he was awesome. People loved him. What did he do? He drawed and quartered people. I'm going to write down that I did it too.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Like, and so that people will think I was a badass too.
I'm trying to think of what lies I would make up about myself. Like,
so many
she could
lies.
snap her fingers and blow out eardrums.
I would just take all of my...
They called it the blood ears.
Blood ears.
Because she would snap her fingers, eardrums would explode, and blood would run from their heads.
I mostly would love to be able to look at strangers and have them leave me the fuck alone.
Oh, wouldn't that be awesome?
Just eye contact would keep them away.
And pregnancy will do nothing to help that situation either. Because it's
first person to touch me, I'm gonna kick them right in the balls.
Oh, it's like, but even just thinking about it, like, you could get really keyed up. Like, ooh, I pity the fool. Like, I'm ready. Try.
Yeah, try me.
So that was a really fun aside. I had a great time talking about all of that. I wanted to jump back really quick and talk about the current climate that we are in with a lot of the, I won't say like cult, but cult thinking, I think really has become very mainstream in a lot of ways. And as you were talking about too, like, as one side is getting more polarized, like, we are also getting more polarized, like, in response to that. And Dr. Appel actually talks about, like, where that sort of animosity may stem from. She says that by their very nature, cults alienate ordinary citizens, for they defy the existing social order. Seeing themselves as separate from the rest of the world, with a separate ideology and a different lifestyle, cult members stand in opposition to society, denying, in greater or lesser degree, its legitimacy.
Yeah, I mean, I can see immediately how that appeals to people on the fringes. If you're not happy with life and the way that it is, I mean, I'm on anti-work on Reddit, the subreddit.
Yeah.
And it's all about, I mean, I totally agree. We shouldn't have to work. We were born on this planet. No other animal.
If we want free pants, we're gonna need a revolution.
Right? Like, no other animal pays to live on this planet.
Yeah,
We figured that out for ourselves. And I can see so many people on that subreddit just being completely alienated about, you know, this American dream, like, work hard and you'll get everything you want. It's not fucking true anymore.
It just reminds... Go ahead.
No, it's okay. I mean, people just are getting really sucked into it. And I can see if someone came along and was like, hey, join my way of life. It'll fix everything that you're worried about.
Yeah, exactly. And then also on the other side, how we on the outside may have a visceral reaction to that. You know, like, it very much repels us. And especially too, like, January 6th was the ultimate example of that kind of revulsion from those who are against what the insurrectionists were doing.
Yeah,
and because it actually literally threatened the legitimacy of our entire system of government.
Yeah, and it's interesting that, I mean, it just blows my mind that it went that far, right?
Yeah,
exactly. That it came to that.
I mean, and then, but you think about it too with Jim Jones, and, like, you would never imagine, first of all, that they would go there. Like, to me, like, still, I know we already talked about it, but just the fact that they sold all of their earthly possessions and followed him across the country, you know, across the world to go to another country. And then the end result of that, it makes you kind of see that these sort of actions are inevitable in a way. Like, that, you know, oftentimes it does result in some sort of form of extreme tragedy or extreme violence. But this, of course, is not true of like every cult or, but
Yeah.
I mean, clearly like these, these sort of this thinking is happening. And I think it's important for the people who, let's say that your family, someone you love, someone you know, or someone that is in your circle somehow like falls prey to these ideas going around. Like, it's important to try to understand your own reaction to that may be like very intense. Like, you may very intensely push against them. And it's because their ideology that they're picking up like actually threatens your way of life and says that it's not legitimate.
And I mean, no shade, but all of this cult discussion, it just reminds me of fundamental Christianism, fundamental Christians so much.
Do you know how many like fundamental evangelical Christians there are in the United States? Give me a number.
Oh, I want to say at least 1 million.
80 million.
Wow, that's crazy.
I learned both of those number facts that I've given out today, like
That's
in
awesome.
at the same time.
Yeah, there's something about being confronted with the other way of life that makes fundies like lose their shit, right? Like, like, is that not the entire reason they like seclude?
Yeah, exactly.
And, I mean, they're one step away from being a cult, and some of them are cults, like straight up, like
absolutely,
like Jeff Warren's and his,
and Jehovah's Witnesses certainly, and I say that because of their extreme focus on conformity. Even in things that are not even mentioned in the Bible, like just random unrelated things.
We are going to cut this out because of confidentiality, but I have to tell you, one of my students, her family is Jehovah's Witness, and I'm like mind blown that a Jehovah's Witness would send their kid to a private liberal school like that. And I only found out because the other week I brought in hard-boiled eggs for like a game, and it smelled like Easter. And I was saying that to the kids. I was like, it smells like Easter in here. Because you always have to say something cool to like lure them in the door away from their parents.
Yeah.
And the mom, I guess, said something to my boss afterwards, like, I'm not mad or anything, but we don't celebrate Easter, so I wouldn't like... And I was like, oh, no, like, because we weren't actually doing Easter activities.
Yeah.
We were doing a counting game with eggs, but isn't that crazy?
I remember, it brings back a really random memory from kindergarten, that we were doing those, is it an acrostic when you write all the letters of a word down and then each letter, so like the word we were doing was Halloween, and we had one girl, and this was like almost 30 years ago, so I'm not worried about anonymity, but her name was Emily, and I remember that she said she was not allowed to participate in that activity because they don't celebrate those holidays. And the teacher's solution, which I thought was great, and maybe you can just take that, is that she went to another thing that we were also covering in our curriculum, and which was like evergreen trees.
Yeah.
So instead of Halloween, she did evergreen.
Yeah.
And I just...
There's always easy alternatives.
Yeah.
I mean, as an educator. But it's crazy. I had a friend in college. She wasn't fundy Christian. Like, I don't think that they were, like, they didn't dress modestly. I mean, she went to a regular university. She was normal. She wasn't, like, sheltered.
She didn't stick out or anything.
Yeah, but, like, her mom, they didn't celebrate Halloween because their mom thought it was, like, the devil's holiday and all kinds of crazy stuff. And that just blows my mind. Christians blow my mind. I think it's because I wasn't raised Christian. Just like the whole thing seems like wackadoodle craziness to me. And I'm like, I can't believe people buy into this heart and soul. Like, it kind of makes me giggle.
Well, it's, like when it comes to, like, I don't know, like I get what you're saying. I'm finding it hard to like collect my thoughts.
I don't judge people at all because
Yeah.
I mean, that sounded so mean. Like, people.
No, but you do you do pick on something, or you put your finger on something, and that is like, to believe a lot of cult beliefs, it has to be indoctrinated early, or it has to be through systematic brainwashing that actually can be explained. Like, you could go and learn how to brainwash people and then do it, and.
That's exactly how it works, isn't it?
Yeah. And also, according to Apple, most of the cults that presently abound in this country can be characterized as millenarian. And the term derives from the prophesied millennium or the 1,000-year reign of Christ. And that makes sense because that is the reigning, the Christian religion is the biggest in our country. So it makes sense that a lot of cults would be an offshoot of that.
Yeah.
Going back to what you're talking about. Millenarian cult is, it has a usually male leader that believes himself to be either the Messiah or a prophet that speaks directly for God. And one of the things that connects them all together in a category is that they do believe that the end is coming.
Yeah.
And so Jehovah's Witnesses are a perfect example of that. And I'll probably keep coming back to them, not out of any sort of wish to persecute a particular group or anything, but just that they are so helpful for what I'm talking about.
I think everyone knows who they are.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's really relatable. The Jehovah's Witnesses are a really good example of they believe in the prophesied coming end of days. They believe that it's anywhere in the next 5 minutes.
Wow.
And aside from a long history of predicting dates and then the dates coming and going in the early 1900s, mid 1900s, late 1900s, they did it several times and they kept resetting the date, but still they act as if it's going to be any minute.
Yeah.
And that is what characterizes the large, the greatest majority of cults in the United States. And I consider it the spiritual Y2K of religious beliefs,
nice.
Just believing that, it's coming. And they usually believe that it's going to be an abrupt and cataclysmic fashion in which the apocalypse comes.
This kind of gives me vibes. Do you remember 2012? I mean, we were both
absolutely
old enough then to have memories. And I remember, I didn't think it was actually going to happen, but I do remember this feeling of impending doom, and this feeling of what is really going to happen. And the fact that people were looting stores and going crazy didn't help. You really did think that everything was crashing down.
I remember that in December of 2012, I was working at Wendy's. And I put in a request off for the 21st.
Nice.
And I didn't think that it was going to happen, of course, because I see all that anyway. But I also thought on the odd chance that it might happen, and which I thought, there's a really good chance. In my mind, I was thinking that it could be a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yes.
That we could see people do
and
crazy
that's how things. I felt too, I think. Yeah.
So I just requested that day off just in case.
I love it.
Just nice. So I could be at home.
I'm a die at home.
Yeah, exactly. I was just I'm going to die at home playing video games.
I can't even remember what I was doing that actual day, but I think I was with my aunt and uncle who were really into conspiracy theories and the Mayan calendar. I remember we spent that weekend watching movies about 2012 because there was that movie that came out about the world ending.
And to me, I always thought, first of all, they got to stop the calendar at some time. Otherwise, there would still be a Mayan there filling out a calendar right now that's continuing on into forever.
Yeah.
It has to end sometime.
And now that I'm older and I've done a little bit of research, you can't take any historical calendar for fact because people have changed the way we view time so much.
Absolutely.
I forget, don't we call ours the Gregorian calendar? That's what we use right now. Because I remember trying to figure out, as a pagan, I was trying to figure out when the true pagan holidays were celebrated. Because I just think that's cool, just for posterity.
Yeah, for sure.
And I remember reading that you can't do that because we don't know how they measured time in terms of dates. And when we apply our dates to it, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And so the thing is, we really don't know. It's lost to history. And I think I remember reading something specifically about the Mayan calendar that, they did the math, if we looked at what we thought the Mayans used as a calendar versus ours, that essentially 2012 was actually 6 years too late.
And I heard, too, that it was just the end of the Baktun, which was so they just like we have years, decades, et cetera, that a Baktun was like 1,000 years or something. And it was just like, you know, I remember being I was such a nerd, but I was like, on 2012, I think I posted like, Happy New Baktun, everybody. Like as if anyone would know what I'm talking about.
Everyone thinks that you've officially like joined a cult.
Yeah, really, I know.
That's exactly what I would look for if I thought people were joining a cult. Like someone talking about some weird ancient holiday.
My favorite example of the millenarian cults that were mentioned in the book, I'd never heard of it, and it was a Native American Plains Indian cult that was led by the prophet Wovoka, and he prophesied the impending doom and destruction of the white man. Like, love it. And he believed that only by dancing could he and his followers hasten the coming of the millennium and the defeat of the white man and the return of the nearly extinct buffalo. His cult was called the Ghost Dance, and they believed that there would be a return to the old ways and all tribes would live in peace, and the only ones excluded from paradise would be the Native Americans who assimilated into white society.
It's crazy that you say this is a cult. And it's not that I disbelieve you.
Yeah.
But, like, you learn about this in history class.
Yeah.
You learn about ghost dance and how all these Native... I mean, here's what I learned, is that... And this is even in college, I learned about this, that all of these Native Americans essentially came together in an effort to, you know, revive their spirituality, and they thought that by coming together, they would defeat the encroachment of white culture. But that's not what it was at all. It was this guy who had started a cult, and yeah, he had a mission, and they did want to do something, but it's crazy that we learn about this, because is this not, I hate that I don't remember this, but is this not what Custer's Last Stand was? Like, wasn't Custer's Last Stand when they killed everyone at the ghost dance revival, essentially? Like, they murdered everyone there. They killed women and children at this ghost dance thing because the white people didn't want them to overtake us, obviously.
So I was about to say that I'd never learned about the ghost dance in school. Mm-hmm. But when you say Custer's Last Stand, I did learn about that.
Everyone learned about it.
And I think that actually like goes back to like this whole, you know, like it's not the ghost dance where all these natives were slaughtered. It's Custer's Last Stand where
Wounded Knee.
I've been to Wounded Knee.
Is the yes. Yeah. So can I read just a little bit about it from Wikipedia?
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a sad place. So beautiful and sad, and there's still like a mass grave there.
Basically, the spotted elk was the man's name, also known as Bigfoot, which is kind of interesting as a Native American name. Mm-hmm. He was a Mini-Kunjo leader on the U.S. Army's list of troublemaking Indians. And they basically had stopped close to Pine Ridge to, you know, with this group of people, and they had erected teepees on the banks of Wounded Knee Creek, and basically they came and tried to take their weapons. The U.S. Army was like, hey, you need to give us your weapons, and one person said no, and it was kind of like, what do we call the thing that happened in Boston? You know, like, with the soldiers, like how one shot was accidentally fired and then it just turned into freaking hell because it's war, and when you hear a shot fired, you don't know who did it, you just shoot. That's essentially what happened. I mean, and they killed 25 U.S. soldiers were dead, 150 dead Lakota, and most were women and children.
Yeah,
it's absolutely, really sad. Absolutely devastating. And it's crazy that this was a cult, but that doesn't mean they needed to be slaughtered.
Well, you know, the survivors of the ghost dance actually gained some new members after that and became the peyote cult. And they were focused primarily on tripping in the spiritual world and actually withdrawing from society completely.
Yes, and the ghost dance thing under the ghost dance name kind of died out because everyone was afraid of violence, which I would be too. If 150 women and children were murdered in front of me, you know?
Yeah,
so anyway, absolutely. It's just crazy that this huge American event in history, I mean, we get the whitewashed version of it.
Yeah, absolutely. You know? Like, I learned about it as Custer's Last Stand, which makes him sound like this really brave, like, amazing person. And, I mean, he's a war criminal.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
And a
we
bad
would call
person.
him on the... We should refer to him like we do Heinrich Himmler.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the arm of a freaking dictator. I mean, the way we treated Native Americans is absolutely fucking so sad. And I just want to... This is something I've been keeping in my brain for a while now that I need to say. The fact that we committed genocide against entire races of people on this country, and now you can buy sage at Urban Outfitters, makes me want to rage.
Yeah.
We have taken Native American culture and made it into something cute, and there are still Native American families who are suffering because of what we did to them, and that's my TED Talk.
Gosh, I know, it's so sad.
We should, once we start making money, we should donate to charities about our topics. Like Pine Ridge Reservation,
yeah,
we could give them something.
Oh, thank you for saying that. Because sometimes I get so down, like feeling depressed about the things that my people have done.
We can help.
You know, I forget that we can help and that I'm not helpless. So that's really great.
And I think it helps to even just be an advocate. You know?
Yeah.
Anyway. So Ghost Dance. You were talking about the Ghost Dance as a cult.
Well, that's one example of the millenarian cult. And, you know, I've been struggling with that word this whole time. Just bear with me.
It keeps reminding me of millinery, which is like the business of women making hats.
Thank you for telling me that.
Because that's every time you hear it, I think of when I worked at Living History Farm, we had a millinery shop where like women's, like it was like, it's a feminist thing, which is why I know it. Because women, like, it was a women's craft, you know, that they could actually do and be respected still. Like, you could make hats and dresses. And so I think of a bunch of rich ladies with dumb-looking hats.
Well, another thing that these millenarian cults have in common is that they are critical of society in the present. You know, just like Ghost Dance. And in the spirit of opposition to the reigning social order of the day. So thus there's always a level of withdrawal from society on some level, and it often arises when a certain subset of people feel frustrated and hopeless, and the tendency towards millenarian thinking often follows wars, plagues, droughts, and dare I say pandemics. Cults happen when people feel frustrated and you know, the situation is not so good, like politically, and you know, things might be just, you know, there might be a depression going on or lots of other issues like that are, you know, around the environment. Like, it kind of all starts to make sense. And Dr. Appel claims that not only does this happen, like very commonly today, but it is actually a repeatable, predictable experiment in human behavior. That when the conditions are right, cults happen. Always.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
It reminds me of something unrelated, but that you might like to hear.
Sure, please.
I just want to say, first of all, totally believe it. I think that religions are proof that anyone will believe something that makes them feel good. But I wanted to note that I see my preschoolers every single day. One student will do something wrong, and 5 students will immediately want to do the same thing. Even if I am actively looking at them and saying, do not do this, they need to follow their peers. And I think it's human nature to want to imitate and follow.
Yeah,
and I think that plays into this.
I wanted to, like, that falls into what the next, like, this next little point I have, and that is this quote from the book that says, people who are firmly rooted in society, in kinship, community, and political groups are less likely to become involved in millenarian alternatives. You get what I'm saying?
People who have, like, you know, a strong community around them, they're already having those needs satisfied that a cult would give them, right?
Exactly. Thank you so much.
I got you.
So, like, do you see how, I mean, the way that the climate has been in the United States and in the world in general, like, where these cults might spring from, or this cultish thinking?
For sure. Oh, for sure.
So, when you think of a typical cult member, what do you imagine the person to be like?
I completely imagine a typical dirty hippie from the 60s. Bare feet, long hair, probably smells. I mean, I'm describing myself. Maybe a little unhinged. I'm also imagining very defensive. I have to imagine that you would have to be, right? Like, because not maybe I'm stealing your thunder because I remember what you told me, but not all of these people are like loners or outcasts. Like they have families who try to get them out of this or whatever.
Yeah, for sure. I imagine like somebody in like a long white robe.
Yes.
That like makes jam or something like to sell.
Yeah, like a simple type of lifestyle is what you always imagine, I think.
Yeah. And like rather than defensive, I kind of imagine that they're just like somebody that's like always smiling like, yeah, well, you know,
Go
there's
with the
peace.
flow, dude.
So Appel dedicates an entire chapter to what kind of person tends to join a cult and what environment those people come from. And a lot of it is maybe not so surprising, but then again, some of it is. Probably the most surprising thing that I learned is that most cultists come from a tight-knit family with strong traditional family values, and that often the catalyst to joining a cult is essentially an exaggerated form of adolescent rebellion. And it's kind of ironic that they rebel against their family unit and then immediately replace it with a new one.
Yeah.
And often that's exactly how these societies function, with strong family ties and a sense of place within the group.
Yeah, I hate to call out Fundy Fridays again because I sound like a broken record, but she talks a lot about how people in these Fundy cults, not every Fundy church is a cult, but the ones that are, you don't want to leave. Even if you know it's wrong and you want to leave, that's your entire family. That's the entire world you grew up in. And if you leave, you have no one and nothing. And that's a way to make you stay.
And I mean, yeah, they design, you know, it's by design. Like that's,
yeah,
you know, and like this is the cult story again and again. But like looking back on the political and social environment of the 60s and 70s and the sharp divide that existed between the older and the younger generation of that time, it's easy to make sense of why so many cults sprang up back then. I mean, the environment was ripe for it. And like, you know, that it explains now, like, especially in the age of social media, you don't really have to, I mean, you can reach millions of people just without going anywhere. You know, back in the day, they used to recruit members by literally like standing on soapboxes.
Yeah.
I mean, that was how it was done. And now, even though people aren't necessarily joining these full-fledged cults all the time, as in like all the QAnon believers aren't moving in with each other, like as far as I can tell, you know, like there's just so much more of a reach for these things.
It's like a cult of idea.
Exactly.
Almost.
Cult of ideas. I like that.
Let's name the episode that.
I love it. Cult of ideas. Yep. So like Appel divides the history of cults into kind of like a two-wave thing, like feminism. The first wave arose in response to Vietnam and was sort of entwined in the bigger free love hippie movement that defined the era, and like experimental societies and like, you know, just trying to change things, because I think it was a big dynamic, like the divide in generations. And I think that that's like a big dynamic now. And it seems like more so now than maybe when I was younger.
Just there's a big divide.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's all our economic society, right? Like the reason that millennials and Gen Zers feel different from other generations is because we have to live our lives differently.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I wonder if there's not always like that huge difference, you know, like between generations. Does that always exist? I haven't lived long enough to know.
Yeah. I'm really interested, just as a side note, I love the idea of generations and studying them as whole groups.
Yeah.
And I know that's not necessarily true all the time, but I remember reading about the silent generation, which is the parents of the baby boomers. And I just remember thinking that generation of people was so interesting because they were the World War II generation, Korea, like they had war.
Yeah.
And they were generally characterized as like putting their nose to the grindstone, just sucking it up and getting it done, like living your life and not having a lot of social uproar, you know. And that's why the boomers were different from them, because they were the ones who were like, no, we're not going to just suck it up and live our lives. Like, we're going to protest or whatever.
And the thing is, too, I kind of wish that the silent generation would be able to have an influence on us now, too. Mm-hmm. Like, I've thought about that, and I know, like, a lot of other people have had this thought, too. It's like a, crazy thought experiment. Like, what would happen if they saw how selfish some of us are today, like not willing to wear a mask for the greater mm-hmm. good, or, things like that, and not considering it like an imposition on their liberties, but a way to unite as Americans and do something together, and a duty to country.
Yeah. I mean, it blows my mind that there are people who don't want to put on a mask when 100 years ago men were going off to war at 18 knowing that they probably wouldn't come back.
So according to Appel, the kind of people who join cults are essentially looking for 4 main things that cults provide. And those are structure, purpose, routine, and order. And I mean, that makes sense, right?
Mm-hmm. That's what I want out of my life.
Yeah. But there is one more very important thing that cults provide their members. Can you guess what it is?
Love.
Sure. But no.
What is it?
Drama.
Oh, I can see that.
Cults provide drama.
Ooh. Oh, and that just reminds me so much of, like, people who have trauma, mm-hmm. like being addicted to chaos.
Yep.
Like, I can see how traumatized individuals from, like, a traditional family, you can see my air quotes.
Yes.
A lot of traditional families have narcissists in them, or, like, like, people can have trauma, not, like, you don't have to have a horrible life. And, I mean, that just seems like a great way that people get sucked in.
Yeah, for sure. And rest assured, we could hear your air quotes, even though we couldn't see them. Good. So here's an excerpt from the book about it. Like, members were told that their lives had very real and very important significance. They had been chosen to save the world, to bear witness to Armageddon, to survive the Holocaust of their fathers. And, I mean, yeah, like, that was my plan, actually. But I was just going to do it with myself. Well, maybe with a few friends, but only if they want to do the same stuff as me afterwards. And if they dress like me. And if they cut their hair. Oh, wait. See, that's Oops. How it works.
Yeah.
So an interesting pattern I picked up on is that those with mental illness, like you're just talking about trauma, I mean, they seem to be more susceptible to cults, but not for the reasons one may think. Rather than being vulnerable, many people actually report relief or abatement of their mental health issues, such as OCD behaviors, anxiety, depression, and bipolar disorder. And, like that blew my mind.
It makes sense, right? Like, I mean, the thing that helped me with my depression and anxiety was a structure, getting a job and having a structure. I mean, especially if someone's doing it for you. Like, someone is taking the mental load of your life off of you and giving you a schedule and giving you structure. And, I mean, I think it would probably feel good.
You're making it sound way too good.
I know. Are we going to start a cult? Like,
I've been thinking,
I think that by the end of this, we're just going to do it.
Yeah, really. So I know that you were wanting to talk about Heaven's Gate, and I want to talk about them, too. They're one of my favorites.
It's just crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So here's my favorite things about Heaven's Gate. I love the idea that aliens help us ascend to another level or dimension. And I just think it's absolutely crazy that these people came up with this idea, and coincidentally there was a comet, Hale-Bopp, which came by Earth for the first time in like 2,000 years. And that had to have been huge. And so I was listening, I'll shout them out.
Give us a quick sum up too of like their like.
Oh, sure. I'm not an expert by any means.
Yeah, I just listened quick and dirty.
I looked at their website, which is still up. Check it out. And I listened to the podcast by the Graveyard Tales. They're awesome. Shout out. They did an episode on Heaven's Gate cult that I just listened to yesterday, and they talk about how they basically needed a reason for people to follow them, right? Like, so Applewhite, the man who, I forget the woman's name, but it's a man and a woman who started this cult, and they were involved in like a platonic relationship.
They were like Bo and Peep.
Yes, they called each other Bo and Peep, and they essentially believed that Applewhite was the next Messiah. You know, he was gifted or chosen to save people, essentially. I
To
might be a
help
little
them
wrong on
to
that.
ascend to the
Yes.
level beyond human.
And then I don't know exactly how aliens got like wrapped up in their worldview, but they came to believe that like essentially aliens would take you to that next level. And so what happened is, I forget how many people died. We should look it up, but a bunch of people committed suicide
It was
by
a
essentially
double-digit number.
Yes, a double-digit number by essentially mixing in a poison with applesauce and eating it. And they all believed that when they died, they would leave their container, their body, and their souls would go on to live in the spaceship, the alien spaceship that was following Hale-Bopp comet. So they said that there was a spaceship like either attached to or following the tail end of the comet, and that is what would take you to the next level. So all these people committed suicide in like waves. And that was the part that spooked me out, was that they did it in waves. Like there's one group of people and you just lay down on the ground.
And it's like they rented a house, and you know, they went out in like batches of 8 to 10 or something.
Yeah, and they all had like little instructions in their pocket of what to do, how to take the poison. And I guess what really strikes me about this cult is that what a way to go. like
With all your friends.
Yeah, with all
and
your friends.
matching outfits.
They had matching outfits. Yeah, they had like brand new Nikes on or something, which like doesn't make any sense. Like
Nike
if you think
actually stopped selling that.
Yes,
that
yeah.
sneaker.
Yeah, they took it out of whatever. But that doesn't make any sense, right? Because if you're leaving your container with the clothes on it, why does your container need new shoes? But
I wish we could ask them. I mean, I don't mean to be glib. Like, I really wish we could ask them about it. And, you know, they believed that their beliefs reminded me a lot of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
I've never read it.
I really, really, really recommend it too.
Everyone does. I just haven't gotten to it yet.
Well, there's like one, I mean, in the very beginning of the book, Douglas Adams is like describing this small bluish green planet, unremarkable planet that was inhabited by humans, and most of them were unhappy all the time, even the ones with digital watches. I mean, he's just so funny. And like, but you know, Earth is being, this is not spoilers because it's like the first chapter, but Earth was being bulldozed or like destroyed to make a hyperspace bypass, essentially. And like, what the Heaven's Gate cult believed is that the Earth was about to be spaded under. That was the phrase they used. And so the Earth was about to be essentially like recycled, and that leaving on the spaceship was the only way that they could continue.
Okay, yeah. I remember that like the spaceship was imperative because something was going to happen.
Yeah, for sure. But it's such a neat story. And like, honestly, there's a big difference in how I feel about that story versus Jonestown. Yeah,
because I don't know a lot, honestly, but I don't think that Applewhite and this woman were abusing people. Especially wasn't the sexual abuse that was going on in Jonestown. Like, that for me is the number one red flag of like a cult where it's like, okay, people are being really, really hurt.
And it's actually used, like, I mean, sex is used as a tool of control. And it's done in like a couple of different ways. But, you know, because not only does it create, you know, those bonds within the group, but it also, you know, a lot of times incest and other taboos are encouraged by the cult, and then after that takes place, they then have something over you to keep you in because you don't want anyone to know what happened.
I think another weird thing about the cult was that you had to change your name.
Yeah.
And they had a really interesting naming system where the last 3 letters of your name had to be O-D-Y, and the first 3 letters of your name had to be consonants. So I remember Graveyard Tales saying one of the names was Ricotti or like Bugatti. Like, they all sound really weird because that's an interesting naming technique. But yeah, I mean, they really did just strip people of their identities. And something really interesting is that their website is still fully functional, and you can read their testimonies, I think. Like, you can read their essential reasoning behind why they did what they did on the website. And there are still Heaven's Gate cult members, which is crazy because you'd think if like their whole thing was that this comet was going to take us and we'd escape, and like now the comet's gone. Like it'll be back again in 2,000 years. You don't have a chance.
That's what they say too. Like the people that are left behind are like are there to try to help ascend, but they also are like, okay, no more suicide though, because the comet's gone and it's not going to be back and you missed your window. And like they still believe that those people went on.
Yeah, that it was right. You know, can I read from their website?
Please do. Yes.
Okay, so it says, this is just, first of all, their website is straight out of 2001. Yes. The top of it has like a red alert. And it says, Hail Bop brings closure to Heaven's Gate. As was promised, the keys to Heaven's Gate are here again in T and Doe, the UFO 2, which was what...
Bo and Peep.
Right? Yes, which is what these two were called, the UFO 2, as they were in Jesus and his father 2,000 years ago. So their cult was like based off of Christianity.
And it's a millenarian occult. It's a millenarian cult.
Love it. So they go on, basically this little blurb right under that. That's all I'm going to read from because this is extensive, this website. Whether Hale-Bopp has a companion or not is irrelevant from our perspective. However, its arrival is joyously very significant to us at Heaven's Gate. That's in quotation marks, and I don't know why. The joy, italicized, is that our older member in the evolutionary level above human, the kingdom of heaven, has made it clear to us that Hale-Bopp's approach is the marker we've been waiting for. The time for the arrival of the spacecraft from the level above human to take us to their world in the literal heavens. So they believed they were going to literal heaven and that Jesus had told Applewhite that this was how it worked. Our 22 years of classroom here on planet Earth is finally coming to conclusion. Graduation from the human evolutionary level. We are happily prepared to leave this world and go with T's crew.
That's why they were all dressed like that with new shoes, because it was a graduation and a special occasion.
Oh, interesting.
It just kind of hit me like, that's why. I mean, how do you dress for your graduation,
Yeah, exactly. You dress up. They now have on their website just a really kind of interesting thing that says our position against suicide. Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of what you were saying is basically the true meaning of suicide is to turn against the next level when it is being offered. Doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
But essentially it's too late.
Yeah.
You missed out.
The reason why
So
I know
don't do
that,
it.
I mean, I'm one of those people, like, I every couple of years go to the Heaven's Gate website and read it again because it's so interesting. And
oh, this is cool.
Yeah.
They have a picture. It says how a member of the kingdom of heaven might appear. And it's like a humanoid gray type figure. Can you see it?
Oh, yeah. It's like almost a stereotypical gray depiction. Except it looks a little more like a human infant, too.
Yeah, and it looks happy. Like he's kind of smiling. Like, I know, I know what you don't know.
And, I think one thing that separates Heaven's Gate from, at least the majority of cults, like not all of them, is just all of these teachings that they have. Like how in-depth it is and like how controlled it is. And the way that cults are able to get you to believe these things is through the process of brainwashing. Mm-hmm. And I'm about to go into a whole thing about brainwashing now. So if you have anything else to say.
I was going to say, let's finish up Heaven's Gate because I found what I was looking for. And it is their exit press release. They literally put on their website like a goodbye thing. It says, at the very beginning, it says, to be issued to the news media. By the time you read this, we suspect that the human bodies we were wearing have been found, and that a flurry of fragmented reports have begun to hit the wire services. The wire? Oh my God.
Yeah.
You can tell these people like their heyday was the 70s.
Yeah.
For those who want to know the facts, the following statement has been issued. And then there's a big title, says Heaven's Gate away team returns to level above human in distant space. Rancho Santa Fe, California. By the time you receive this, we'll be gone. Several dozen of us. We came from the level above human in distant space, and we have now exited the bodies that we were wearing for our earthly task, to return to the world from whence we came. Task completed. The distant space we refer to is what your religious literature would call the kingdom of heaven or the kingdom of God. So that's just the first, I'm not going to read the whole thing. That's just the first paragraph.
Yeah.
There's a whole page, like essentially of their exit letter and some relevant scripture.
And that's on their website?
Yes, yeah, that's on their website. So check it out, heavensgate.com.
Oh, you can also go on YouTube. I'm not sure what you have. Probably type in like Heaven's Gate videos and all of the people that committed suicide on that day, or I'll say all the people that ascended on that day. They left video messages behind as well, so you can hear them talking about it, and it's really interesting. I mean, they are all so super excited. They're like with their friends, like they can't wait. I'm happy for these people. I mean, I like, you know, it's sad that I don't know. I just wish I could be that happy about my eventual demise.
It is interesting because, like, are we going to have the stance that all cults are bad? Because are they?
It's a tricky question, and
right?
I will get to that.
Like, yeah, so, like, should we feel bad for these people? Right. I personally believe that everyone should die the way they want to.
Exactly. Like, I love the agency involved. You know, like that's what it is. But then again, you know, you have to consider, what I'm wondering is how did they come to get this information, and, you know, by what means was it disseminated? Like, as in, of course, we know that there's still all the videos of their teachings, like from T. Is it T or Doe? I forget which one he is.
T and I don't know. I don't remember.
Bo, Peep, T, Doe.
They had a million names.
But anyway, the man, the leader.
Applewhite.
Thank you.
That was his
you know, like all
name.
of his teachings are still, you know, they're still there, and they're still there to be found. And, you know, he does give a lot of sermons, but, you know, that's what I would call him. He says he's Jesus. So, but I just wonder, like, what kind of brainwashing or was brainwashing involved, or is this just very similarly to, like, when somebody just joins a new religion, or, you know, I just wonder.
We'll have to do a whole episode on Heaven's Gate.
I would love to do that. But, like, as far as brainwashing goes, keep in mind, some cults will just slowly envelop the life of a person, like merely just sucking up their free time slowly over a period of weeks and years, while another cult might be loading the person into a bus the next day. And regardless, the new convert will start attending meetings where there may be intensive prayer sessions, long meditations, public shaming and humiliation, and long speeches or sermons. And these events are designed to break the already vulnerable person down mentally. It creates an atmosphere where the mind is more open and the person is less able to think critically.
I don't mean to interrupt,
no,
but
you're good.
Sounds a lot like the U.S. military and boot camp, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And I was actually thinking, too, you know, I grew up in church and everything, and I don't have any problem with that, really. But the one thing that always did bother me is, like, during special occasions or, like, special sermons at the end, and they do this at many churches, like, they'll have this emotional guitar music and, like, this, you know, way of the preacher changes the way that he's speaking, like his tone of voice, and, like, all of these elements come together to create, like, this very specific emotional atmosphere. And that has never set right with me, because I've always felt like that was very manipulative.
You know, after I had kind of left the church and I was kind of like an angsty teen trying to figure out what I was doing, I lived across the street from a church that my FFA advisor and teacher also went to, because small town.
Right.
So I went to church with her one time because I was selling citrus. Shout out FFA kids. You know what I'm talking about. Citrus sale is huge. It's like Girl Scout cookies. And I just remember I went to one church service, you know, and the pastor, who was my neighbor, like, we lived next to him, he, like, welcomed me, and everyone made me feel so happy and safe there. And it was this backcountry church, really small, like, and I remember I went home and I was like, we need to go to church. Like, we need to go because I feel amazing. And looking back, I totally think that was, like, all in how the service was designed to make you feel.
That's part of my disillusionment, too, is that, you know, regardless of my own spiritual beliefs, I'm definitely, like, not about churches of any type, really. And it's for the mere fact that church is a business, with quarterly goals and a profit margin. You know, like it is a business. And I just don't think that religion should be a business. I think that that's where it goes wrong. There really shouldn't be money and, you know, things involved.
For sure.
So it just bothers me as like a former business owner myself. Like I just can't, you know, and I can, the more that I started to see it that way, the more that I realized like that's really, really true. Like, especially some of the newer churches coming out are just like, they have like their own branding and like it's so corporate.
I mean, the Mormon church is like that, right? Like they have their own investments. They have their own marketing team.
Yeah,
They've got everything.
I mean, it is a business. And, you know, like if you don't get into this stuff when you're young, like there's, you know, there's even a verse in the Bible that says that. It says, train up a child in a way he should go, and when he's older, he will not depart from it.
Oh, I totally know that quote because that is what Michael and Debbie Pearl of famous Fundy fame, that is where their To Train Up a Child book title comes from, because they believe in whipping your child anytime they do anything wrong, even when... Okay, here's my rant on blanket training. If you don't know what blanket training is, Fundies will literally sit their 6-month-old baby on a blanket, and anytime that child has the, you know, natural curiosity to leave the blanket, they hit them with a Willa whip.
You're literally supposed to whip. To encourage the child to leave the blanket.
And they'll be like, come here, come to me, and then when he doesn't, they whip him. I mean, it's all just about breaking down your human nature, breaking down your ability to question and your ability to question authority.
And that is exactly what brainwashing is about. Like, as I was reading about brainwashing, like I was struck by how much the process sounds exactly like what a virus does in the body. And like how it attacks you and how it takes over and it like enters the cells and starts replicating and like, you know, it just, I think it's a very apt description of how cults grow and spread. Like, brainwashing it's literally a mind infection, and it's one that we are all susceptible to. If you have a brain, then you are susceptible to brainwashing. Like there's just no way around it. I wish I could think that I'm like better, and undoubtedly somebody that hears that will think like, but not me. And that's just gonna make it even easier. So one of the best ways to brainwash someone, like, so this will be important like for our cult, so take notes for our future cult. This is what we got to do. Okay, repeatedly introduce stress without allowing an opportunity to rest or recover. The stress can be physical, emotional, or both at the same time. And the ingredients are exhaustion, overstimulation, tension, and excitement. This puts a person off balance and makes them unsure of everything. So it like pulls the rug out from under them, so to speak.
Yeah, it sounds like my trauma response.
Yeah. I mean, as they're going through that, like they're dealing with those things, they're being told at the same time that they're being purified. That the suffering is growing pains as they are tested and transformed, and that the whole process is framed as a rite of passage.
Gotcha.
And so like that gives it like this really special meaning.
I have to imagine in a lot of places this goes along with like fasting, no sleep, that kind of stuff. Yeah,
absolutely. Like these are all things, and I mean, it could be something as simple as like every single moment of your day is structured. So you're waking up early, and then you have lots of chores to do the whole day, and then you have to go to a sermon or like a prayer meeting or, you know, whatever, and you have to sit through that for hours and hours, and then you rinse and repeat. And like that's how it works. And going through those things actually changes your brain structure. It is like, it's the equivalent of like being stripped down naked in front of a big group of people and being humiliated for it, and then finally being able to put your clothes back on. Like that's the whole sense of like being broken down and then rebuilt in the image that the cult wants. So not only that, but like in order for that sort of process to be undone, it would require like sort of a second mental undressing where like they need to pull those cult ideals off of that person and like help them return to like a normal state.
We have to re-brainwash you, but the correct way.
Exactly. And like that, you know, if you go through that experience, like how willing are you going to be to strip down again?
Yeah.
When you've already done it. you know, and you made it through it. You survived it once, and it was really hard, and it actually became like a point of pride for you that you survived it. Like, how willing would you be to like go through it again? So, like, and during all this time, new neurological connections are being made and rewritten. So, in that way, brainwashing should be understood as physiological as much as it is psychological. And that was something just really new to me to think about it. Like, I know that mind and body are like so connected, but like this is just another level.
Yeah, and it's a full body experience.
Yeah, exactly. Brainwashing actually changes structures in the brain associated with personality and behavior. And it's done through sleep deprivation, thought disruption, and physical exertion. So once all that's done, after the brainwashing has been complete, the next step is indoctrination. So this is a time in which many things, such as natural sexual urges or a tendency to doubt, are branded as evil, and the new values of the cult are instilled. So like in this section of the book, Appel spends a lot of time comparing the indoctrination in cults to the German Third Reich. And I found a paragraph in there that I found especially unsettling. And I'm thinking, I'm like, pause this, I'm going to read it, pause it, and then listen to it, back it up and listen to it again and really, really think about it. The Third Reich undermined the will of the German population through fear and disorientation and fostered a process of self-terrorization that weakened the integrity of individuals, bringing out unconscious dependencies and the tendency to regress. And it sounds so much like what's going on. Like, I mean, it just sounds so much like what had been going on throughout the early stages of the pandemic. Like, it really, really freaked me out. And I now think that everyone in school should, like, really, really study the Third Reich. Like, not just, like, the facts that we learned, but, like, how people were convinced. And, I mean, how do we not talk about that all the time anyway? How have I learned so much about the Holocaust and World War II and everything, but yet I've never heard anybody talk about how an entire group of people, like the entire country of Germany or the great majority of it, was able to buy into these things.
And I feel like I've heard a bunch of times from a lot of people, you know, that Nazis were normal people.
Exactly.
But no one ever elaborates. And it was a calculated movement. I mean, like, Hitler started off talking about undesirables in society, but, you know, he didn't start off sending people to gas chambers. You know, I mean, he just said, like, blacks are stealing your jobs. Does that sound familiar in today's society?
Yeah, exactly.
That someone's stealing your job? Or that, like, you know, Jews were money hungry and greedy and that they were a stain on our society. Like, you know, you just start taking these minority groups of people and
then at the same time saying, like, stereotypical Germans or, like, the stereotypical German Aryan look is, like, God's chosen people.
Yes.
So then elevating them while also pushing the other
and that
down.
really simple dynamic at first just keeps becoming more divided until it's we need to kill everyone who's not us.
And then we have to keep in mind, like, those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. And the thing that I would like everybody to remember is that these were normal people. They were just like you and I. And yet this happened to them.
And they were our ancestors.
Complicit. They were our ancestors.
People forget, even if I don't care if you weren't from Germany. I think I've said this on the podcast before because it's my favorite idea that, you know, past 200 years, your genetics do not show anything specific. Past 200 years, every human on Earth is your ancestor, essentially. Yep. And so those people, you know, who were believing in Nazi idealism, the Nazi youth, they were people's grandparents.
Yeah.
Like, they're not just like this crazy group of people that something happened to. Like, they were us.
Exactly. And I think that it is the lack of education on those points and a lack of understanding the nature of humans and how we really don't change as much as generations may change and rise up and rebel against each other. Like, in very, very basic ways, we do not change.
Nope.
And those people could easily be us.
Yeah. I remember I studied abroad in high school and I went to Leinfelden, Echterdingen, in Baden-Württemberg, Germany, near Stuttgart. And they had a really cute museum there that was all about the people of the town. And they were like, it was like a cabbage farming area. Like,
That's
like
so
that was
adorable.
traditionally, yeah, that was traditionally what they farmed. So
We're
like,
proud cabbage farmers.
yes, and the museum was just like, a 2-story house. Like it was like the Mary Todd
Aw.
Lincoln House, where it's like a tiny museum, and they had like clogs and like cabbage farming tools, but they also had a whole floor about this town in Nazi Germany and how people, they basically, I remember, said that like despite people's beliefs, they were forced to adhere to Nazi law. People who lived through that in that town later gave their testimony about it, and that's in the museum. And it gives me chills thinking about it, and I saw it years ago. So shout out if you're ever in Leinfelden, Echterdingen on the train from Stuttgart going south, get off and go see the museum, because they talk about how these people were normal, everyday people. They were good people. They were hard workers. They weren't out to get something from the destruction of another culture.
I mean, they were farmers, and
They were
I consider
hardworking farm
farmers are like
people.
the salt of the earth.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, they just keep us fed.
Yeah,
They're
and
good people.
They're hardworking people, and they talk a lot about how easy it was to subscribe to the Nazi ideology because it was good for you at first. And then, by the end, everyone was like, wait, we don't want to do this anymore, but you can't.
Yeah,
You're
you
stuck.
can't get off the
the
ride at
conveyor
that
belt.
point. And yeah. Let's talk about the sex stuff.
Oh, I love it.
Let's get ready for some dirty cult smut.
Yeah, we're not a podcast for children, by the way. if
Yeah,
you
no,
haven't
not
figured
at
that
all.
out yet.
And we were actually talking about, should we stop fucking cussing in our podcast? And we decided even if we took out all of the swearing, it's still for adults. So,
Yeah, and also, fuck no.
fuck no. Yeah.
We're grown-ass women. If you don't want to hear it, you don't have to listen.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a free country, and I would never want anything that I say to, like, hurt your feelings. Because you don't have to listen.
Well, and I just think if you don't want to listen to cussing, that's your own problem.
True. So the method and means of sexual practice within cults ranges a wide, strange spectrum from abstinence to orgies. While the Unification Church used marriage to get green cards for members across seas, the male congregants of People's Temple would falsely declare their own sexual desire for Jim Jones to show their devotion, like we talked about earlier.
Is the Unification Church the ones who call themselves the Moonies?
Moonies, yeah.
Okay, and they marry people without really knowing who they are.
Exactly, because the point of the marriage is like the legal benefit.
Yeah, and I think that's a part of a lot of these cults is that the cult leader chooses your spouse, right?
Yeah, that's like a big thing. Mm-hmm. So in some cults, sex is engaged in a group setting, and those who have hang-ups are considered to be unenlightened. And that is where that group sex is usually where the incest and taboos happen, and then the blackmail.
They're a cult from New Zealand, and they famously are like very, like sex is only between married people. They're a millenarian cult. They would like get together and they would all fuck their spouses like under the sheets in the same room. And it was like this really kinky thing. And Fundy Fridays, that's all my brain today.
Oh, I hope I feel like I should reach out to her and be
Oh my
like,
God.
we mentioned you 10
Please-
times in our podcast, so please listen
Please
to
be
this.
our friend. Like, you're so cool. She talked about how there's like this sexual repression in a lot of millenaristic religions or cults or whatever. And that has to come out in some way, right? Like, you can't repress your sexuality. That's not how humans work.
Bad things happen.
And this was like an outlet, essentially. And there was also some really gross stuff going on. Like the leader would like demonstrate sex to the couple and basically like, abuse women for his own gain. But that was just a really light thing. I thought they all would like get together, and I mean, it's kind of hot, right? I'd be into it.
I kind of love it. What I love about it is that they're like, and technically we're not breaking the rules.
Exactly. This isn't sin because you can't see us fucking.
That's so good. It's really kind of, I actually think that's kind of adorable. Like,
I don't know. It's like, it's very innocent, right?
Yeah.
Like because you have to imagine, too, these are people who've never had sex with anyone else other than that one person. Mm-hmm. So it's not like when you imagine like this thing, like happening, you imagine a bunch of like sex depraved people who are like, you know, really into it and really kinky, but they're probably just like awkward and weird, and they're probably not having life-changing sex, like,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I mean, but so like the main thing about sex is just that it is a huge tool that one way or another is used to like control people and keep them in the group and following the rules. And so going back to the example of like the incest, like you do it because it's part of like the cult's ethos, and then they have that as blackmail against you. That right there, encouraging a sexual taboo while also making it shameful, is an example of what is called the double bind. And this is a really important concept within cults and also within narcissist abusers too. And so the double bind is a kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't scenario where there's no way to win. And like a really, really superficial example would be like if I told you, Mel, okay, I am not going to eat chocolate anymore. So if you see me eating chocolate, you need to stop me.
Okay.
And then you come into the room and I'm eating chocolate and you're like, wait, stop, don't do that. And then I turn around and I'm like, you dumb bitch, don't tell me what to do.
Yeah.
And then you're like, dang, well, you told me, but then, you know, and then
Doesn't
if you
make any
didn't say
sense.
anything, I'd be like, you're not even trying to help me. Like that's a double
gaslighting.
bind. Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, it's so you can see like how deep and powerful these trauma bonds can be like between these among these cult members, because they are going through all of this together, like, and they're being faced with these double binds and creating that sense of pressure. Like they're all going through that as a group.
Yeah.
So it, you know, the huge first wave of cults that sprang up in the 60s and 70s also gave rise to a new profession, which is the deprogrammer. So like all of these people they have trauma bonds with their group. They've been brainwashed, you know, they have been cut off, and in some cases they may have sold everything that they own, you know, and don't have any possessions anymore. So like it became a thing to like hire a deprogrammer. Wow. And these were the people that would like kidnap cult members and like in some cases and like take them off to be deprogrammed, which is so funny, kind of. I mean, it's sad, but I think it's so funny that the breaking in order to you have to unbrainwash by brainwashing. So,
God, that's insane.
One of the famous ones was Ted Patrick, who was known as Black Lightning.
Like white lightning?
Yeah, isn't that kind of a badass moniker?
It really is.
He says, in the book, he says, cults completely destroy the mind. They destroy your ability to question things, and in destroying your ability to think, they also destroy your ability to feel. You have no desires, no emotions, no pain, no joy, no nothing. Which honestly sounds like me before medication and therapy. So I feel a need for a quick PSA here. Mental health is real, y'all. Take care of yourselves and be kind to your mind as much as you can. If something was a little bit wrong with your heart, you would want to take care of that, right? Well, the brain is infinitely more complicated than the heart and just as important for your body to be able to function normally. So if your mental health is not doing so well right now, firstly, know you're not alone. Second, just like brainwashing can change the physical structure of your brain, so can depression and mental illness. It is a physical thing.
It will literally change how your brain works for the rest of your life.
Thank you.
And we've talked about doing a mental health episode for a long time. We might finally get around to it, but we both struggle with mental health, and you know what works is therapy and medication. We're not going to give you any of this new age bullshit. People deserve free healthcare so that they can get free therapy and free medication.
Preach. Absolutely. Just remember, like, it is in your head, but it's not just in your head. So
everything's in your head.
Right?
That's where your brain is.
Exactly. So I hope those of you who might be struggling out there will reach out and get help. And of course, you can, I mean, if nothing else, you can send me an email at tellmelandstell@gmail.com. That's one L in Mel, two L's in Stell. Tellmelandstell@gmail.com. You can send me an email and I will try to find something. I'll try to find some resources for you in your area.
That was why we set up that email when we first started. It was supposed to be a hotline for people who are struggling. And if you are struggling, we will try and find you resources in your area to help you. And it doesn't have to be mental illness. It can be domestic violence or drug abuse or whatever you need help with. We're here to be a tool that people might be lacking in their life.
Yeah, for sure. Like I imagine you and I like being friends to people that need friends.
Exactly.
Like that's, you know, like the reason why I would want to participate in a podcast is because I know how comforting it is when I'm home alone, because I'm home alone a lot by myself. And it helps me so much just to have voices of people talking in the background. And, you know, I feel like those people are my friends, even if they don't know it.
Yeah.
So I just love this idea. And like, whoever you are, if you're just listening and you're alone, like, I am your friend. It's real.
Yes, we will be your friend. We're really here thinking about you as we record.
Yes, you. Back to Ted Patrick, the Black Lightning. He goes on to say, when you deprogram people, you force them to think. The first thing I do is shoot them with challenging questions. I hit them with things they haven't been programmed to respond to. I keep them off balance, and this forces them to begin questioning and to open their minds. Then and like, I think it's interesting because I actually literally said about in the brainwashing part, like that it is to get you off balance. Like that's the whole point.
So they throw you off balance again.
Yeah. And now he's really controversial because like some of the things that he says a lot of good stuff, but if those questions don't work, then he would proceed to attempt to provoke a response by openly ridiculing the cult leader or tearing up a picture of them. And once he even cut off the braid of a Hare Krishna member. And I feel like that's assault.
For sure. Cutting someone's hair without their permission is always assault.
Yeah, like when right? Like simple, right?
For sure.
When I read that, I had to wonder if this guy is an ends justify the means kind of person.
Oh, he sounds so much like every 80s cop ever who's like, well, I got the job done, didn't I?
He's like,
you know what I mean?
Cleaning
like
up the streets.
Exactly, yeah. Like, no matter what I do to people's personal lives and hearts and souls, like.
So, but also when I read that, just knowing that those kind of people exist and that many of them are in law enforcement, military, or politics, like it keeps me up at night. So I just found him like really unsettling, but generally his method is to engage in a conversation with the cult member in which he challenges all their statements and beliefs and trying to push them in a place where they have to actually produce new thoughts, like think critically to provide an answer. And he describes that he can tell just by looking into their eyes if a person has been programmed or not. And I don't know. Yeah. You think so?
I can totally see that. Can you not see like the look in some like really religious people's eyes? Like, okay, so I went to high school with a guy who was Mormon, and he kind of got more devout after he graduated and became a missionary. And like, I just remember looking on his Facebook, like seeing the pictures of him, and it looked like he was dead inside. I mean, like, you can see when there's no light in someone's eyes.
Like, I was kind of thinking, like, maybe a 1,000-yard stare kind of thing.
Exactly, yeah. Like a shell-shocked veteran, almost. Like, and I don't know if that's something just an empath can see, but, like, I think everyone can see that.
I think I just try, like, it might be something that I can see or have seen before. I just really tend to be like, well, you just can't. I tend to just say, you don't know anything about anybody till you talk to them. So I'm just like, but Appel says that as many go through the process of breaking down their brainwashing, like these individuals actually begin to change their posture, expression, and vocal tone. And I just think that's really crazy.
The whole time we're talking about this, I'm just thinking about how elastic our brains are.
Yeah.
It's crazy that you can, like, completely rewrite parts of your brain just because of some stimuli from the outside. Like, all it takes is one guy questioning you for you to be like, oh, right. this is who I used to be. This is how I used to act. Right?
Yeah, that's
crazy.
It does blow my mind. But it also gives me a lot of hope. And it should give you all a lot of hope out there if for some reason you're in need of hope. That it really, really doesn't seem possible. I can understand that. How you could just never think that you could ever feel any different than you do right now.
Your brain will heal itself.
And it is it's
elastic.
I was going to say like plasticized.
You're thinking about plasticity, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
you have neuroplasticity.
You got the spirit.
Yeah. After the initial meeting with a deprogrammer, the subject often has an awakening to the reality of the situation they are in. However, once the meeting ends and the person's left alone, they often begin to float or exist in a sort of in-between with their beliefs. And at this time, they often fall back into old habits such as chanting and ritual. And it makes a lot of sense because these are the tools and coping mechanisms that have been instilled by the group and are designed for moments such as this.
Yeah, that's their structure, right? Mm-hmm. They're just falling back on it.
Yeah, and I mean, naturally, leaving a cult is much like leaving an abusive relationship when you're still in love with the abuser. That person may feel depressed, disconnected, and almost childlike in their inability to make decisions for themselves. And in a lot of cases, deprogramming and other therapy is needed in order to break someone free of a cult. But however, according to Appel, as many as 1/3 of cult members are able to leave on their own. They're usually disillusioned or unable to cope with boredom or the tedious work that often comes with being a cult member.
I love that. All that brainwashing they do to keep you in the cult can't stand up to the inherent humanness of not wanting to fucking work.
I love it.
We're like, nah, I just want to eat fruit in the jungle. Like your brain, that's all your brain wants to do.
I just imagine like, you know, there's some cult member like out tending the fields or whatever, and they just like see someone over across the way, like at the lake or something, laying down, and they're just like, just throw their hoe on the ground. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm done. Like
throw their hoe. I'm out.
Out. So Appel quotes a study that found many physiological differences in former cult members, such as extreme weight loss or gain, menstrual changes, hair loss, and even skin conditions. Like, isn't that wild?
Yeah.
Like, just merely being in a cult can cause these changes within the body.
Do you think that has something to do with, like, the fact that you have changed, like, your personality has changed, and so that unnatural change kind of just sets off some other stuff in your brain?
Yeah, and it's
like
really crazy. Like, it makes me wonder, you know, I mean, could I give myself, like acne or something just by chanting?
Yeah,
you know, like,
right? Just by doing some of these activities.
Like, it's so weird, you know. And I'm just thinking random.
Here's what we're gonna do for science.
Okay.
I'm gonna be a cult leader, and I'm gonna program you.
Oh, let's do it.
And then we'll deprogram you, and then you'll be a cult leader, and you'll program me.
I love it.
And we'll see what happens to each other.
I love that I'm going first too, because I'm like,
and my baby too.
Oh yeah, yeah. That'll be easy.
Yeah, it will.
I just
thinking about a little hairy Christian baby with a tambourine
and a big long braid, like a clip-on braid.
Yeah, exactly. Or like a little rat tail.
So, I mean, naturally, like, there's no one-size-fits-all method to deconversion, and many experts wildly disagree on what the best treatment is. Though what most agree on is that halfway houses and group therapy for cult members is a bad idea. And citing the Jonestown survivors. Like, when they engaged, like, there were, like, 4 or 5, maybe even 6 people that survived. And, like, that's just a random number. It's a single-digit number.
Okay.
But, you know, they actually engaged in group therapy together. And during the time after their therapy sessions, like, they would get together and, like, they started to re-indoctrinate themselves as a group.
I can totally see that. I'm trying to think of something that's relatable. Like, I mean, it's just like a disease. Like, it would be like if all my animals in my house had fleas and I cured all but one of them of fleas, they would still all get fleas again.
Yeah.
Because I didn't knock it all out.
Exactly. And, like that, it's just wild. And so you mentioned earlier, you brought up the question, is that the best thing for a cult member to leave the cult if they have everything that they need? And that's a really good point, because there is still a lot of disagreement on the best way to go about deprogramming. And then also, is that really what's best for that person, especially if they don't have a support system outside of the cult.
Yeah.
And if they've experienced, like I talked about earlier, an abatement of their mental health symptoms, like their mental illness, like if it's actually doing better.
Is it ethical to pull them out of this healthy, air quote, situation?
Yeah. And that's, that's the question. And still, there's also the other question of, if they don't have a support group and their whole life has been inside of the cult, what do you do with them once you pull them out?
Where do you put them? Mm-hmm. What do you expect them to do?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
So I don't think that deprogramming from a cult, I would not say that just because somebody is in a cult means they need to be deprogrammed.
Agreed. I think that it's their free will to join the cult in the first place. Right?
Yeah, more or less.
And as long as they're not being abused, then there's no reason for us to pull them out of their chosen lifestyle.
And I think, like, the main thing is we need to remember today, yesterday, and tomorrow to have empathy for people, like whether they're in your in-group or your out-group, and remember that they have the same types of, like, fears and insecurities and issues and problems and things that you do, and they're really not that different from you. They're just a few brainwashing sessions away. Mm-hmm. And like they are people, and they are doing the best that they can. And I was also thinking, going back to January 6th again and the cult of Trump, and, one thing, even though what they did was totally wrong and it was an act of treason, I still think about, how scared and desperate must a group of people be, that they are willing to go and do that and risk their lives. Because I think going in, I'm sure at some point, a lot of them realize that they're in a very dangerous situation, especially when someone was shot and killed. Mm-hmm. And I just can't imagine the feelings that they must be feeling.
And especially for a leader. So, like, if Trump is their de facto leader, who doesn't give a shit about you?
Yeah.
Right? He didn't care about pardoning them. He didn't care about, everything that he, like, tells them, in quotes, is like some, like, what did he say that one time where he was like, yeah, we should shoot them all. Like, he makes offhand comments because he's a fucking idiot. Like, I don't think that he cares. I don't think this is any plan by him. I just think he's an idiot who doesn't think of the words before they come out of his mouth. And he's been rich enough to get away with that his whole life. And so... like, they're in this cult of idea. Yeah. They're in this cult of, like, this is what we believe. And I guess he's the picture image of belief that they want to adhere to. And what a sad picture image. Yeah, like, really? That's who you chose for your cult leader? Some fake orange tan, obese man? Like, really?
Yeah. And I don't understand all the evangelical support as well. Like, how many pastors were like... Which you shouldn't be... Pastors should not be preaching about... politics.
No.
That's like that. No. You don't have to pay taxes, and there's a reason.
Separation of religion and state,
and that benefits everybody on both sides.
Mm-hmm. All religions.
The reason that we say this is not because we are anti-religion. It is because it is what's best for everyone. That is how everybody's beliefs and everybody's way of life continues to be respected. Mm-hmm. Is because we have those really important separations in place.
And that's what all of these people who claim to be like constitutionalists and like, the founding fathers. The founding fathers are rolling over in their grave because you think that America is a Christian nation.
Yeah.
America was not supposed to be a Christian nation. It was supposed to be a place of refuge for all religions.
Yeah.
And even the founding fathers weren't devout Christians. Newsflash. That's going to turn a lot of heads, but it's the truth.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's the hard truth.
I mean, and the facts are out there to be found. It's not just like you have to take Mel's word for it. Mm-hmm. You can go and see that for yourself. Several of them wrote at length on how they were, at the very least, agnostic.
Yes. And I think I'm thinking of specifically Thomas Jefferson was there's a really special word for what he believed in, but we called it the watchmaker theory in history class, where he basically believed that someone made the watch, but they're not watching us anymore. Like a God made this earth, but he's not here playing a hand in our life, which I think is a great theory. So anyway, I don't know where I was going on this, but suck it, QAnon believers.
Well, I was going, what I wanted to remind everybody, and you too, Mel, is that if I'm trying to say like there, if not for the grace of God, go I, or whatever.
I don't know.
Anyway, whatever. No, it's fine. So,
sorry.
I want to see a little bit more patience, compassion, and understanding on both sides, but mostly from the outside looking in as well. Like this book that Willa Appel wrote, like in the reviews that followed after she wrote it, the book was considered to be a real triumph because cults and cult-like thinking was a huge issue in society when she wrote this book. And there were people that were feeling very polarized like we are now at that time. And she gained a lot of respect for how she presented these facts. And I hope that I did some service to the way that she presented them as a uniting front so that everybody can understand the phenomena and what's going on without attaching all of these other things to it. You need to understand the people that are doing these things or the people that have done these things fell prey to the same things that we are all susceptible to, and we are all susceptible to it all the time. And part of the thing that makes it susceptible, other than us having a brain, is just the mere fact that it's also the conditions. Like the conditions that we exist in on this planet, like what's going on. Are there wars? Is there shortages? Are we having a pandemic? Is there natural disasters?
Unrest, basically.
Is there unrest? You know, these things will give rise to cults. So it's not a matter of who or what, it's when is it going to happen and which person is going to happen to fall prey to it at the time when it does.
Yeah. I love it.
So these are our brothers and sisters.
And thank you, Dr. Appel. Your research is amazing. Shout out. You know, I always wonder if authors are going to Google their name every once in a while, and this will pop up. And I hope she listens to the whole thing, just so at the end we can be like, girl power. Love ya. Good work.
Yeah, I mean, she's amazing. She represents, like, so many things that I admire in a human being and in a woman, and I look up to you, Dr. Appel. Thank you so much for this book. I'm really glad that I could put it on my conspiracy shelf because it is what I would consider a interesting cultural oddity.
Yeah, and a classic.
And a classic.
A classic of the conspiracy shelf. Well, I think that wraps us up for tonight.
I think that does everything. Can you give everybody our deets?
Yeah, so check out our Facebook page for fans. We're going to start posting some cool stuff in there. That's Everything Under the Moon podcast fan page. Check out our Patreon at EUTM Podcast. We've got some exclusive content there for just $3 a month. You get access to everything. And I include some random ramblings about some cool dreams I had and some other cool, juicy stuff that you'll really want to hear. Check out our YouTube page. And like Stell said, email us at tellmelandstell@gmail.com if for anything, really. But if you just like to give us a suggestion or if you'd like to meet us or if you just need a friend, hit us up.
Yep. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks for hanging out with us, friends.
All right. See you later.